Welcome to the inverted upside down. You're listening to Paranormal Now with Alan B. Smith, rebroadcast on the UNX Network, Thursdays at 11 p.m. Pacific, Fridays at 2 a.m. Eastern.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome good souls to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. And tonight our turnoff is taking us not up, but down and underwater. We have fantastic guests tonight, Debbie Ziegelmeyer. Some of you may have noticed the banner I accidentally spelled Ziegelmeyer, which has since been updated. So my apologies to Debbie, but that has been fixed. And we are going to be, we're talking not just about USOs, UFOs that are in the ocean, but these are seen everywhere throughout continents, in lakes and rivers, large ponds. And there seems to be this kind of veil of mystery that water surrounds the UFO phenomena with. And I think, there's quite the utterances as of late on social media, entertaining the idea that, seriously so, that perhaps there are alien or other bases in the ocean. And this is why we might see something like a Tic Tac dive down into the water. Sure, maybe they're concealing themselves, but maybe there's something else going on there. That's been a mystery that's been with us for quite some time. The question is, has Debbie cracked the mystery? We'll find out in just a little bit. As a friendly reminder, if you want to get the same kick I do out of your caffeine, you can sign up for the aliencoffeebean.com Paranormal Now discount. So just go to alienbean.com, put in the discount code for Paranormal Now, and that code is mystery, all caps, 20, mystery 20, and you get 20% off. Shipping only in the U.S. So if you're outside of the U.S., it doesn't apply. But for all of us stateside, Alien Coffee Bean is there to provide us our cosmic energy. All right, and of course, subscribe, please, on YouTube. It's really, really helpful to keep this channel growing, to keep the podcast growing, and I appreciate all of your support for those of you who have followed over the years. But if you can jump on over to YouTube and help us get those numbers up, I'd really appreciate it. And of course, jump into the live comment section. It's always fun to hear what you have to say and your questions for our guests every week. And again, thank you so much for your support. And if you're an iTunes or podcast listener, wherever you listen to your podcast, please leave and rate on that system. That also helps with the ranking, so we can get the podcast up there and get more Paranormal Now family members. And speaking of membership, Paranormal Now is rebroadcast on the UNX Network. And on the UNX Network, you can get a free membership for all the amazing shows that are aired on that network. So just go to unxnetwork.com and you'll receive the monthly newsletter, the blog access, event notices, and a free digital copy of our quarterly magazine, which Lee Spiegel has now joined the editing team there, and he's writing some articles as well as a show on the UNX Network. So the network is expanding very quickly. It's amazing what Margie and Race are doing, and I'm just really grateful to be a part of that. All right, our guest is Debbie Ziegelmeyer. She is from Imperial, Missouri, was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, attended school in Safford, Arizona, and later attended high school first in Southern California, then Arnold, Missouri, where she graduated from Fox Senior High School. Debbie joined MUFON in 2000 and became a Field Investigator shortly after. She is currently a MUFON Star Team Investigator, the State Director of Missouri, a member of the MUFON Business Board of Directors, the Functional Director of Underwater Research and Recovery, a Benefactor an Inner Circle member, and a MUFON archivist. She also teaches a MUFON Field Investigator dive team course. That's pretty cool. That's a course I could imagine taking someday in the future. She has been involved with research in the 1947 Roswell crash for over 25 years and was a volunteer archaeologist on two NBC projects: 2002 Roswell crash, Startling New Evidence, and the UFO Hunters episode Roswell Revisited. She has done so much, I can't even keep on reading. Debbie, it just keeps on going. Welcome to Paranormal Now. How are you?
I'm pretty busy.
Yeah, that's quite the resume.
Doing this for a whole long time. That's part of
Okay.
it. Part of it.
So, where did your passion for UFOs and eventually USOs, but where did your passion come from?
Oh gosh. I'm not exactly, for USOs. I think as a diver, I became a scuba diver, unfortunately, the weekend after 9/11. And I'm saying unfortunately because that became very interesting. After 9/11, all the divers from that point on, and maybe within a year before, were our files were grabbed by the FBI because they thought we were going to do something underwater to bridges or dams, or
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanted to learn to scuba dive. So right off, I had an FBI record, I guess, with the FBI. But
Mm-hmm.
I started diving in the Caribbean, and I couldn't believe how much was underwater, that from the boat you couldn't see what was underwater. And I started doing research on USOs, craft coming in and out of the water. And I was just amazed at how much there was. And the more that I got into it, the more I found. And then people started giving me things. And here I am. When you say that I became a scuba instructor in 2007. So my passion just grew and grew and grew toward water,
Mm-hmm.
which fortunately, that's about where all the activity is around water now.
Where do you feel more at home, in the water or on dry land?
Well, naturally on dry land, but where would I rather be? Underwater, where it's nice and peaceful and quiet.
Right. Well, unless you're a whale, I suppose, because then you're hearing lots of other noises.
Oh no, it's very peaceful. It's almost like being an astronaut, except that you're not in space, you're underwater, and you're weightless. There's a whole different world underwater. It's just incredible. Everybody's been to a pet store and seen an aquarium. Can you imagine that underwater, a live aquarium with fish come up and look at you in the face? And coming across a wreck. I've been down 130 plus feet and seen large ships that were sunk just, as a natural, or I guess a reef, as a artificial reef. But it's just amazing that you can stand on the edge of a waterway and not
Mhm.
realize what's hidden right below you. And that's what the mystery is. 70% of this earth is water. And only 5%, according to NOAA, has even been explored. It's just an incredible place to be. And I just, I encourage children, everybody that I can, to at least try it once, at least snorkel.
Yeah, well, I grew up near the beach and the ocean, and taking those dives, holding your breath, staying underwater for a while, it's peaceful, it's beautiful, and then when the light comes through the shimmering waves, it does have this sense of serenity that is kind of hard to find in everyday life. I suppose outside of meditation, but it's fleeting like so many things. And when in all your experience of being underwater, speaking of fleeting, have you actually seen perchance a USO?
Funny you should say that. It was January, let's see, January 26th of
Hmm.
2006. I was on a Royal Caribbean cruise, and um, and I was on a Royal Caribbean cruise. So I'm in St. Martin, went diving all day long, well,
Mm-hmm.
a couple hours, but it did take about a half a day, 2 dives. And we get back to the ship. The ship is leaving port, and I'm one of those people that wants to take pictures of everything. So I think this was only my second cruise. I was on Explorer of the Seas, and as we're leaving St. Martin, headed to St. Thomas, we got about 20 minutes out. There wasn't anything to see anymore across the coastline. So I decided to walk toward the bow of the ship and meet up with the rest of the group. We had a little bit of time because back then you had your 6:30 dinner or 8:30 dinner. We had the 8:30 dinner, so I'm going to take pictures. And as I'm walking, I'll look over to my right, and there's what looks like a saucer-shaped craft. And they're hovering over the water. They're, oh gosh, I would say probably maybe a couple 300 feet out from the ship. They're about the size of a small car, and 2 of them, and they're circular, and they're doing kind of this, and they're doing this. So I've got this, and they're just barely above the water. And I thought, what is that? And I look over, and I look behind me because I thought, okay, it's a reflection off of something on the ship. It's only my second cruise. And there was nothing behind me. And I looked again, and the ship was leaving them behind. I thought, that's not a reflection. That's something in the water. So I grabbed one quick picture, and then I took off running toward the back of the ship, and I'm running under lifeboats and trying to get around people. And I was able to get one other picture through plexiglass, but the first one is not through plexiglass. There wasn't any there. It was kind of like, I guess a little bit above waist high, the railing. So I got one very good picture. And the odd thing about it was that was January 26th. All of my pictures after that were 8 days and 11 hours later, the date on them was. So it readjusted my camera. So all the pictures right to that point were, were every day they should be up to January 26th. And then after that, they were 8 days later and 11 hours. So it readjusted. I talked to everybody that I could that worked on the ship and said, are you putting little drones out there that look like UFOs for the entertainment? And they said no. And I said, well, is there a submarine that would come out? And they said no. Well, it was above the water anyway, so I have no idea what it was, but there I was diving and don't see anything, and then I get back on the ship and they're hovering right over the water.
So the picture, does it not exist then?
Oh, the picture, yeah, I got a picture. It's in my book, The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways. Yes. I have it's in black and white and in color. You can see it out a little bit better in color. They're kind of orangish colored. And it's funny because the cover of my book, when Margie Kay, who is by my editor and publisher, when she she said, here's some ideas for the cover of the book. And it was my very first book. And I looked over and I thought, why would you pick that? It looks almost exactly like what I had seen, just coincidentally. But I did one. There were actually 3 of them. There was another one materializing kind of out of a fog that I didn't see till later.
I see. Okay, so let me share the image so that everybody can see what you're speaking of. Let's go here.
Oh, you got it.
I did have it. Now I lost it, of course. So I'm going to pick it up because it does look like a classic UFO.
Right. Yeah, like that's kind of what it looked like that, right? Only kind of orange color. It was orange color, and it's in my book. That's not the picture that I took, naturally. That's one that Margie found for me. Sure. But it is in my book, and I have no idea. So I did see that. I've worked a lot of investigations and seen a lot of things I can't explain, but I just thought that was, in a way, amusing because there I was diving, and then I get out of the water, and then I see something from the ship. So
yeah,
that's a very active area. The whole Caribbean is a very active area.
Well, just a sidetrack here for just a little bit, Debbie. Knowing Margie Kay, she does seem to have a little bit of a psychic thing going on, right?
She
She has some
does.
intuitive powers occurring, and I kind of wonder if that was an instinct on her part.
Oh, I know. She said, "I really like this picture." I thought, "Oh, wow. Yeah, you really got that." And it's kind of funny because I hadn't even shown her those pictures yet. And as I was writing the book, well, this all started in 2000. I think I started in April of 2000 because everybody was worried about COVID, and I'd been collecting information for 20 years. So I started
Hmm.
gathering up all my pictures, the cruise pictures, and things that I had gathered, um, investigations that I had done, things that people had handed me over the years, and decided I was going to put it in a little book. I'd never written a book before, and there was so much I couldn't believe. It was just a massive amount. It was going to be titled USOs and UFOs. In the Caribbean. I mean, I hadn't even decided really on a title. I got about a month in, and I called Margie and I said, I'm changing the title because my research took me right to what the title is, the alien colonization of Earth's waterways. I thought, oh my gosh, they're not visiting, they're here.
So,
And
well, that
it
okay,
scared me a little bit.
that's the big question, right? So,
Right.
do you actually believe that aliens are living or residing in our oceans?
Oh, absolutely. There's, uh, as I got into this, into the information and trying to get everything together, there was more and more and more and more proof. There's there's proof of actually in the Catalina area. There's so many sightings going on there, and then that's where we had I think that was Fleur up the Nimitz 2004.
Hmm.
So that's just about 100 miles from San Diego, off the coast, about 100 miles or so. And Catalina Island, I believe in 1990, I think it was July of 1992, they had over 200 sightings of things that were coming out of the water. There's so many sightings in that area that there's people that I think Preston Dennett wrote a book that was just about Catalina Island. There's also there's artists that have been drawing things that they look like balls of light, and people don't want to admit what they've seen, but you can look at some of the artwork that's coming out of Southern California in that area right now, and you're thinking, wow, they've seen something, you don't really want to admit it. And we have bases around there. We had the whole Malibu thing. I'm still not really sure about the results of that, the anomaly
What's
up there.
what's the Malibu thing?
Right off of the coast of Malibu, there's something at about 1,700 feet. It looks almost like, kind of triangle shaped. Somebody found it a few years ago on, Google Earth. They were able to pick it up from Google Earth. The funny thing
Mhm.
about it is that I believe it was Jimmy Church was telling me that he took a group and tried to put, sending, I guess it'd be an underwater vehicle, and he said that, they had an underwater camera equipment. Right off the top of my head, a UAV. Um, and he said every time they get deeper than about 100, 150 feet, everything would their electronics would go out on it. We had some other people that wrote articles and said that there was nothing there, that they had gone down, tested it, taken a piece, and it was just barnacle. Well, it would be because I had a boat in the Florida Keys, my husband and I did for years, and we had to have the bottom of it cleaned every 2 weeks just for what's growing on it. So there is some kind of an anomaly, and it's right there off of Malibu, underwater, just off of the coast. And you can see it on Google Earth. Um, I st- uh, I still think that's something. I don't believe what they're trying to say is that it's a natural phenomenon, that it was something natural to the area. Our Missouri MUFON section director, Lynn Mann, lives just a little bit south of me. She found almost the identical thing right off of the coast of Japan, and it looked almost
Interesting.
exactly the
Okay.
same.
So I guess the argument from the other side would be, well, they look the same because they're probably formed in nature
All right.
in the same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just a coincidence that you have all these sightings that are coming out of the ocean right there between Malibu and Catalina Island, and then you have what's called Devil's Triangle right there in close proximity to the other one right there off of Japan. Just a coincidence.
What do you imagine these formations are? These triangular formations underwater?
I have no idea. They're so deep. The one off of Catalina is somewhere 1,700 feet, and it's right off of the coast. You can't go down as a diver. There's been a couple different people that have tried to go down and
Hmm.
just take underwater camera equipment, and it's not working. I think it's still some kind of an anomaly. I don't know if it's some kind of ancient, maybe some kind of an ancient structure that was left there and the water rose, kind of like Atlantis. I don't know if maybe it's an underwater entrance to something military, or if it's
Hmm.
underwater alien, some type of alien slash human base. And that's the problem with that. It's, you can ask all the questions, and for every question you ask, you know, there's 10 more. We don't have the
That's why we
answer.
keep doing this.
That's
'Cause,
exactly that's why we
yeah.
keep doing this.
Well, if it were a stone structure, I mean, why would that be an attraction to a UFO? I mean, to my mind, unless there's some function to it, or do you think that there's a culture there?
Well, it looks like there's pillars, and there are reports of people that have been taken in the area, and they believe that they were taken to some type of an underwater base.
Mm.
Whether or not that's it seems awful close to the coastline. I would think something is farther out toward Catalina. That might
Uh,
have been at one point, but I think probably 50, 60, maybe 100 miles out, someplace in between, I would think Catalina Island and maybe San Diego, someplace deep in the ocean, in a deeper part of the ocean. There's something definitely there.
How long have they been here?
Wow, since the recording of mankind, the look at pictoglyphs. Some of those, they have some that they have found on pyramids that look like ships from Star Wars. You see, the Native Americans have drawn what look like some type of alien being. You've got the big
Mhm.
eyes, that what looked like maybe helmets. So this has been going on. There's passages in the Bible, and I didn't happen to have one right off, but I know there was one. It was Zechariah, and he's talking about how there was something in the sky, and it was 20 cubics by, I believe it was 20 by 10 cubics, and it
Mhm.
looked like a giant roll, well, which that would be about 15 by 30 feet. It's a
Okay.
description,
Yep.
and it sounds like a tic tac, what we're calling a tic tac now. This came
Mhm.
out of the St. James version of the Bible. You can go back through the Bible, and there's a lot of different passages in there about the fire in the sky and about people being taken up into the fireball in the sky, or voices coming from a giant fireball. You go back through Native American folklore, and there's stories about star people. We have stories about star people in my area here that go back into the Lebanon area. They've been around for a very, very long time.
What about
Oh,
this UFO video that came out some time ago? Um, it was a 2019, I think, Navy aircraft recording where it was like a tic tac that looked
right.
like it splashed into the water. I mean, I'm pretty sure that originally was released by Jeremy Corbell. Um, did you see that video?
Right. Well, three of them, I think they came out, I believe was that January 20th, I believe, of 2020. They were released in 2017. Several different videos, three in
Okay.
particular. I had heard originally there were five, and I know I'm pretty familiar with three of them. So you had Fleur, Go Fast, and Gimbal, and Fleur was the one from the Nimitz in 2004, and I believe that's the one that the Tic Tac. And then you had in January 21st, 2015, those were off, I believe, the Roosevelt in the Atlantic Ocean. They might be the same thing or maybe two different ones. And they were all officially released by the government in 2020. They're pretty, everybody's pretty familiar with them now. But the one, what they talk about, the one that's the Tic Tac, what they don't tell you is when the video, if you listen to the whole video, this was going on for about 2 weeks. They were up in the sky. They were, high altitude, very high altitude. There were several of them. They were talking about a massive group of them. There were groups of 10, and then they saw more of them. The one came down. They were following it. It came down and got right to the water, splashed in the water. Well, they went down. The pilots went down to look at it, and it left kind of in the water. It was left like a motion, where they thought that there was something bubbling in the water, and then it came out of the water, and they followed it for quite a while. That's the one that they call Fleur. How they did, what's amazing is how they lost it. That it went just within 60 seconds, I believe, just fast right over off the coast of where they were supposed to be doing their maneuvers. It knew where they were going to go.
It anticipated. Now, one of the theories I've heard.
It really didn't anticipate, because you got one exact GPS spot where they had planned that when they were doing their maneuvers, they were going to start at the area they're in, and then they were going to go over off of the coast of California, closer by San Diego, and then come back. But that was their point. You could anticipate something and be in the general area. It was in the exact area. And that's scary. It somehow knew.
It's slipping my mind now, but I know in the military, like they would have like these rendezvous points, or like these sort of checkpoints, and that one of the theories is that the UAPs would know, and this was particularly, I think, in the 2004 Nimitz case, they would know where the U.S. aircraft was headed, and it would anticipate where they're going. And the theory is that it must be one of ours, these UAPs, because only the U.S. military would have the information to know where, those, I forget what the term is, but something like a rendezvous a point. If anybody listening knows, please help me out. Does that make sense to you, that maybe the UAP is one of ours, and it knows where, our headings are?
Well, they didn't act like it was one of ours. They, even if it was, let's say Russian or Chinese, how would they know? That's one of the mysteries.
Right.
I'm thinking, if they were there, they were not maybe necessarily anticipating, but I'm sure the coordinates were someplace. Maybe they were programmed into the aircraft already, into the fighter jet, and maybe they read that. I'm not really sure if they would read their minds exactly, but I know a lot of the stuff is pre-programmed in. A lot of their coordinates, a lot of the things that they're going to do, they've got it pre-programmed in. Maybe they read that, knew where they're going to go.
Well, I guess, the easy way to think of this would be it was a U.S. Advanced aerial craft of some sort, and they had access to this information, or this is some kind of civilization that's so far in advance technologically that they can read everything that we have, like the light years beyond the best hacking people and hacking systems that we have. It seems like it's just cutting through butter for them to know what's going on within our systems, what's going, like in your case with your camera. I mean, how can within moments they sort of intercept the fact that you're taking a picture and alter the data on your camera? That seems very odd to me, even for an advanced civilization.
Yeah, I think that was electromagnetic field. That had something to do. We run into that a lot. Going back in the other, now that we're mentioning that, we said they knew what point to go at. I wonder how many times they had been observed before these same ships doing these same maneuvers. Maybe they already knew that they were going to go there because maybe that was something they had done before. I don't know if anybody's brought that up, but if they've been watching this encounter went on for a couple weeks, and
Ye-
I would think that
Right.
if they had another point they were going to, they didn't necessarily anticipate it. Maybe they were watching, they'd recorded it, they'd seen them do that before, and they already knew where they were going to go because they saw them do that last week. Might have been
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Uh,
Debbie, that sounds like a really good FOIA request. I don't know if you do that. I've never done a FOIA request myself, but that would be very interesting to know if those points changed, or was it the same for a period of time? So anyone, any advanced, you know, craft that's observing from a distance, unbeknownst to the U.S. military, maybe they picked up on that.
I could give
That's
it a
interesting.
try. I know the last time I tried to make a request, I had a very nice lady give me a phone call and tell me that it would probably be in my best interest to just let it go, because these type she said these type of requests will put you on a red list, and she said you'll have trouble checking in at the airport. And I said, okay, it wasn't that important.
Oh
But
my
I was checking
gosh!
for
Wow.
flight information, and she said, they're going to check you at the airport, and you're going to be on a red list, and every time you go in, TSA is going to be bothering you. She said, probably just let it go. I said, okay. Well, now we have Flight Radar 24, so I don't even need,
Hmm.
I don't need to find out where flights were anymore. I mean, it's a great tool that we've been using.
But
Um,
Debbie, this is the video that I'll share this. This is the video that Jeremy Corbell shared, and it's the spherical shaped UFOs and advanced transmedium vehicles filmed in the Combat Information Center of the USS Omaha, July 15th, 2019. So let me pull that up so that we can be sure we're talking about um, the same thing here, or something different. So, okay, do you see that?
oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that's a different one.
Yeah, yeah. So this one,
Yeah,
a little
that
bit
one
more.
came in and out of the water.
Right.
Whoa, it's getting close. Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind outside, gust of 40.
Whoa, splash. Mark bearing and range.
This is impressive. These are military personnel that are not only they trained observers, and it's not to say that trained observers can't make mistakes, but you have clearly multiple trained observers that had plenty of time to try to work out what this thing. I mean, we're talking about minutes worth. Now, one of the debunking theories I've heard was that it simply got low enough and out of frame over just the slight curvature of the ocean, and then that's why it kind of got obfuscated, and then it comes back into frame again. It creates the illusion, but they say a splash
Right.
in this video.
Well, I thought it was a little odd too when they had the hearings that as the congressmen and women were asking questions, that they got to the question about what about unidentified objects underwater, and the answer was pretty much, well, that's something that we're going to have to talk about behind closed doors. So I thought, aha, that's I'm in the right place at the right time here.
Yeah, yeah. Debbie, I just realized I was enjoying this conversation so much. We missed the first break.
Oh,
So we're just going to keep going until
okay.
and we'll skip over that and do the second break. My apologies to Ray Hobbs and Margie K. But okay, so of all the cases that you have studied, um, what was the first one that you looked at? I'm not saying the most amazing, but the first one that you looked at and you thought to yourself, okay, there are UFOs, you know, transmedium craft navigating our waters.
Um, as far as craft, probably the reports of oh wow, there's so many of them. I mean, it's massive. The the what I probably when Mark D'Antonio told me about his sighting that he was on a nuclear sub and he saw a fast mover.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
thought, okay, I know this person. And then since then, I've had, I think, four other people that worked on submarines who have also seen these fast movers underwater. That got my interest right there. Probably what changed my mind about the title of the book was when I started doing research on some of the Russian sightings, because during the breakup of the Soviet Union, a lot of information was released. And there's a few books out there by Russian UFO investigators. And the one that really got me was the one from 1982 in Lake Baikal. I don't know if you'd heard about that, about the giant swimmers. And there's several I found, I think it was three or four different reports. But these swimmers, this is Lake Baikal, 1982. This lake is
Mhm.
over 4,000 feet deep. There's some of the wildlife, some of the marine life in this lake is only in that lake. It's indigenous to that lake. I believe it's
Mhm.
the largest freshwater um, lake in the world. So anyway, these divers went down, and these Russian divers are the equivalent of our Navy SEALs, and they were down training, and they were at 165 feet, which is
Mhm.
recreational divers are limited to 130. So these people were down. These divers were down very deep. Seven of them went down. At that depth, you've got flashlights. Everything's pretty dark. They're down training, and they come across four aliens. These aliens were in some kind of a silver skin outfit. All they had on was a helmet. They didn't have diving tanks. They had some
Mhm.
type of a helmet with a breathing apparatus. They were 10 foot tall, four of them. Three stood to the back, one to the front, more like that was the leader. So these seven divers naturally backed off, came to the surface. Well, the scary part about it is if you're a diver, they were 165 feet. They probably had at least a couple hours of safety stops on the way. So they didn't just come to the surface. They saw these giant 10 foot tall aliens, and then had to come back up and level and level and level until finally, after at least a couple hours, they were able to leave the water. So what
Mm.
happens? They tell their superiors, and they decide after a couple days they're going to send them back down with a net. So these guys go back down to the same area, and there these aliens are again, and they decide they're going to throw this net over the top of one of them and bring it to the surface. And just as they approach it, the alien puts its hand straight out, and all seven of them shoot. Seven of the divers shoot directly to the surface, just at a high rate of speed. Went up to the top, went to the surface, no decompression. Three of them died immediately. The other
Oh my God.
four were severely injured. They took them to decompression chambers, and they only had two. One was broke, and they stuffed all four of them in the one
Mm.
decompression chamber, and only one of them lived. And after that, they decided they weren't going to do training in the lake anymore. There's also reports in the area. I think it was the Baltic Sea, where they were at. There was a submarine at 1,300 feet and saw some of these swimming by. There's also a cave that they found in the area that has 10 foot tall bones. I mean, from something that was 10 foot tall, and they found those in a cave. So there's sightings in the area. There was a guy that was a shark hunter, I believe in the 90s, that was diving in one of the area lakes, and he came across some of these. He said they swam by him. So there's several reports, according to the Russian information, that there are giant 10 foot tall swimmers in their waters, in and around their waters. And they've been down there for who knows how long. I mean, where are they coming
They
from? They've got a base. They're living down there someplace.
So they've seen them.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, because we've heard stories of bones uncovered in caves on land and that sort of thing, but it's and the closest, for the most part, that I've heard of encounters with very tall beings would either be extraterrestrials on board a craft or something like a Bigfoot. And so these are underwater. Do they look similar to the other types of extraterrestrial descriptions that we've heard?
Uh, I would say pretty much. It was kind of hard to tell. They said they did have the big eyes. They had the helmets on. It was hard to see past the helmet. Um, Tall, long, skinny, very skinny,
Hmm.
long arms, long legs, silver suit on, but no breathing apparatus except for the helmet, and it looked like something over their mouth, and just swam with ease at depth at
Yeah.
1,300 feet. So
Pressure.
they're down there. They've seen them coming close up toward the surface and then move down. There was somebody on a boat that also reported them. They're called giant swimmers. So the giant swimmers are in and around the Russian area. And if you read, well, there's a lot of it. I have, I think, 3 or 4 different accounts in my book. And there's probably, if I did more research on it, I'd probably find several more. But that's something that's been of discussion with the military, because after that they had a hearing on it, and they decided that first they were going to reprimand the whoever was the officers that decided to send these men back down, and then there was a discussion on whether or not they should go back down and make another attempt and try and catch whatever it was, and they decided it wasn't safe, and they just made the area off limit to diving and to training.
Where was this hearing?
Lake Baikal in it's Baikal, I believe.
Oh
It's in
no, but I mean, it was like a military hearing or a governmental
oh, they're in
hearing.
Russia. They had a hearing. Well, they lost 6 divers, 6 very experienced military
And
divers.
so
There was a hearing about it.
it's on record where they're like talking about these, what
Oh
they
yeah, it
witnessed.
was like right. I found it in couple different places, a couple different
Wow.
books. I found it online, and yeah, there was an actual hearing about it, and it was decided that they wouldn't. They were just going to let it go, and they weren't going to dive in the area anymore.
Wow. Quick question. It seems to me that people who spend a lot of time in the water have tattoos. Are you a tattoo person? You are. That's so funny.
By default,
By default,
um,
right, right.
right for my birthday just several years ago. I think it was right
Uh-huh.
after I became an instructor. My son bought me a tattoo, and so what I
Ah,
did
okay.
was I got a tattoo on. Let's see. I don't want to use the name that they call it. It's on my upper part of my back. I mean, lower back.
Uh-huh. Okay.
They
Yeah.
call it a T a
T
stamp.
zone or something, or yeah. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we got it. Right.
It's a diver. I have
Okay.
it's about that big, and it's a diver holding a bag that says UFO. And
That's awesome. Like a little goldfish, but a UFO in a bag. That's brilliant.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a bag, and it says UFO, like I've been diving for a UFOs. Yes,
So
I do.
was that your first tattoo?
Oh, right, yes. And then I have another one that my granddaughter, when she turned 16, which wasn't all that long ago, they came up with this idea. Um, Granddaughter, daughter, grandma all get the same tattoo, and we're not even Italian. We're German Polish. So,
Uh-huh.
but it's like Vita Vista. I don't even know what it is. It's on my site. It means I came, I saw, I conquered in Italian. I,
Nice. Well, so you came, you saw, you conquered, you got a UFO out of it.
right,
Right.
right. So I've got that. It's I can't even remember what it's called, but I mean it's on my site someplace. I said okay,
Yeah.
just do it. Let's just get it over with.
Well, my first tattoo was for my 40th that year. I think yeah, it was 40th birthday year. That's when I got my first and only tattoo. Um, and I'd always wanted a tattoo, but I could never think of the right one. Also, I was finally like in a decent mental space where I knew what I wanted. So mine's Lord of the Rings related, in Elvish Sindarin. So I don't have a UFO. It's not as cool as yours, but that's so exciting to hear. So the UFO that's on the cover of your book, that's what you saw. Is that a common type of looking UFO that you hear of reports
No, it's a
for
disc.
USOs?
It's
Yeah.
definitely a disc shape.
Mhm.
So I guess so, yeah.
Regarding water, when we're looking at cases of UFOs coming and going out of water, is it typically disc craft or otherwise?
I would probably, it's, thinking about it, sure. I think so. I think most, it would seem now, tic tac, but circle shape, absolutely. The video that you showed was circle shape. You could call it circle, you could call it disc. But
Mhm.
yes, and we had the tic tac. The reports that I had of things that were hovering over the water, most of the time, yeah, I believe you're right. I never really thought about that, but they are, because there's a lot of triangle shaped craft. But I believe a lot of them coming into the water are disc shaped. I'm not exactly sure what is going underwater at high speed, but
Mhm.
from what we've seen, a lot of that, may or may not be the Tic Tacs. Also, too, I found a report that it was out of Puerto Rico, and there was a giant ship that it said it took them, oh gosh, like 3, 4 minutes to be able to get around this thing. That it was huge and it was moving just above the water. So that it's been maybe 40 years ago, but that was moving just under the water. They were traveling from, I believe it was Cartagena to Ponce, not Cartagena, Cabo Rojo to Ponce and across the ocean, and they happened to see it. And so that they said was circular and several levels like a cake. A lot of the sightings that I have that are reports from ships are circle shaped. So, yes,
Some people say that a lower tech explanation for how these craft move within water medium is something called like cavitation or supercavitation. Does that explain how they're able to maneuver the way they do?
in the air and underwater, I used to. I was friends with Carl Feint. Not really good friends, but I mean, we were acquaintances that we met at the conferences, and the man was just a gem. He passed away not too long ago. He had a theory about that the electromagnetic field that's formed around these craft, and so you see these pictures of this craft, and then you see fuzzy around them. Also, the
Hmm.
electromagnetic field is also what had changed my camera. And as a UFO investigator knows, that's one of the things that we look for is the light. People's lights go out, their cars go off, like in Close Encounters. All the things that happened to Richard Dreyfuss, those
Hmm.
electromagnetic fields. Because of the electromagnetic field surrounding this, these craft come in and out of our atmosphere and in and out of the water in ease because they never touch. This was Carl's theory
Yeah,
that
that makes sense.
there's no sonic boom. They go with ease underwater. They never touch our atmosphere or the water, and that's why they can travel that way.
Uh, Besides humans and whatever these other uh, intelligences are allegedly, you know, driving these craft, do you think that there's any other intelligence on this planet that we should be aware of? Like higher intelligence, self-aware intelligence,
Self-aware intelligence. You mean human or extraterrestrial?
or otherwise, yeah, on this planet. Because Ufi, I'm not sorry, not Ufi, Jinkis made a comment earlier in YouTube, and it comes up on occasion the idea of cephalopods or octopuses being uh, kind of a very bizarre, number one, uh, animal, but also a very intelligent animal. And I do wonder, it, are they self-aware? Are there other animals on our planet that we should look to, because maybe they can tell us something that we're just not looking for?
I don't know. I'd love to be able to have a conversation with dolphins and whales.
Hmm.
Uh,
Do
they're
you think
very
there's
intelligent,
yeah?
but I mean, it's It's just they communicate. That's something that we've never cracked. Their language, but why wouldn't that be great to find out? We know what's going on underwater, especially at depth, because we're limited to the depth
Right.
that we can go to. But as far as other animals, I don't really know. My expertise is more in gathering trace evidence, craft, underwater. So that might be something you want to ask Margie Kay.
That's
She's
true. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
She's got a book on that.
Um, so okay, so you're not attempting to connect psychically with these animals, but you do think that dolphins and whales are self-aware or just at a higher tier of intelligence?
I think they're very intelligent. That there for a while, the Navy was training dolphins to. They were training. Oh my gosh! I read a report where they were putting bombs on them and then training them to go over to buy ships. There's some kind of experiments going on in around World War II where they were going to use kamikaze dolphins
Mm.
until finally, I think it was PETA said, you can't be doing this. But
No.
dolphins are very intelligent. There was a little boy that was coming from Cuba. And I don't know if you remember that a few years ago, and his family drowned that the boat went over, and the dolphin saved the little boy.
Hmm.
What was he, 8 or 10 years old?
Yeah.
So they're very intelligent. They're at least intelligent or more intelligent than dogs. Dogs are very intelligent. I mean, it surprises me. That's why it upset me when people are. I mean, I'm one of those that um, followed the Sea Shepherd and the killing of the whales, and I just thought that was
Hmm.
just awful. That I'm glad they finally put a stop to some of that. But they're very, very intelligent creatures.
Yeah. Well, and that's
Mammals.
the thing. So
Mammals.
just on our planet, we have these different tiers of intelligence. From what I've seen, I think that dolphins and whales are self-aware. There's been evidence to suggest that whales have names, right? Like certain pods, and people, the whales within that pod have a name. That indicates self-awareness, because goodness knows my cat recognizes when we call her name, but no one else, there's no other cats that's going to call her the same name. It just doesn't work that way. Um,
We
and
don't give animals enough credit. They're very intelligent,
yeah, yeah.
and just because they're not at our level. I had read someplace that a lot of breeds of dogs are at least as intelligent as a 4 or 5 year old child. Just mentally. I know we've got a little dog that just that dog plays us. I mean, she's very intelligent, and she'll play us against each other. So, and she gets what she
uh,
wants. I mean, that's
and
pretty
and
cool.
that's the funny thing is, yeah, cats always get the manipulative reputation, but dogs are just as manipulative. They know what
Oh,
they're doing too. Yeah,
they absolutely do. They give you that look and they whine and
yeah.
they're picky and oh yeah.
Well, in this world of research, when people are speculating about exobiology and sentient beings out there in the universe, they say, well, we only have, one higher sentient being, us, to compare to, and to set an example. And what's the likelihood, because it took billions of years for us to occur, and dinosaurs never reached an apex where they can build rockets and ships and that sort of thing. um, and they were around for much longer than we were, and they couldn't reach that. So the argument is, it's probably unlikely in the majority of planets that life would reach the level of intelligence that we have here. But my thought is that if if panspermia is a real theory, right? And DNA kind of gets spread across the universe, then I would imagine there are parallel evolutions on other planets. Um, and here, it's not just us, in my opinion. We do have high intelligence, like dolphins and whales and octopus. Um, so I think that statistic is totally wrong, because they're leaving out all these other intelligences when they do the math on this. And I think that's totally wrong. And so if we have all these other intelligences here on Earth, is it possible that these what we think are extraterrestrials are actually Earthlings?
Um, it's interesting because are we?
Good point. Yeah.
There's a theory that we originated from Mars. Hey, there's pyramids on Mars.
Mhm.
There's a face on Mars, and I don't care what they say about there's not a face on Mars. They showed the face on Mars. We all saw it, and then all of a sudden, NASA was showing us something that was a few miles away that was deteriorated. But there's definitely things on Mars that need to be looked at. There's also I don't remember the name of the author that was talking, did the science, and said it looked like Mars had suffered some kind of a nuclear explosion or holocaust. I mean, it was blew out their atmosphere.
Mhm.
Could we have originated, some of us? Well, there used to be a missing link. What is it? What's it up to? 7 or 8 now missing links?
Oh,
Yeah, how could we, all of us, be, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, and we're all on the same planet, but we didn't all evolve from the same small cells. They used to say, well, what was it that the cells originated in the water and then came out and then
mhm.
grew legs? It was almost like a tadpole. This is what I was taught in school, evolution. Well, it
Yeah.
seemed like if evolution on one planet, you would all evolve pretty much the same, and there's 7 or 8 different missing links. So
Well, there is a pretty big tree, like a bush now, of like all these different hominids. And we see apes and we see monkeys. So, like, I don't know. I think that maybe that part of the evolution just took place later. Like what we were taught in grade school years ago is just wrong and should be updated because the two interpretations don't work. But let's continue that on the other side, and we have so much more to cover regarding USOs. This is Alan B. Smith streaming to you live on the Mystic Lounge YouTube channel, rebroadcast on the UNX network, 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Fridays and Thursdays, 11 p.m. Pacific Time. We'll be right back on the flip side.
Tell me why, with 12 sides, the odds are that we die, roll the die. As you hide, I can't find you on the other side of the line.
This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth?
Do you have an interest in the paranormal? Then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Christina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time. It's new. It's the X. X. X.
On and again, the signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your grateful host. Taking us out of the break is music by Septembrio. If you want to find out more about their music, please check out Septembrio, spelled with a Y.com. And our special guest tonight is Debbie Ziegelmeyer. We're talking about UFOs and the underwater world. We've been focused mostly on the depths of the ocean, and we could cover that more. But I am curious, Debbie, what about rivers and lakes and smaller bodies of water? Because here in the Hudson Valley, we've certainly had our share of sightings.
Yeah, I was helping the locals there in Hudson Valley, and we had an area that we wanted to go diving in and weren't able to, where things have been coming in and out of because it's a reservoir and it's private. There's a lot going on there. And this in Missouri, wow. We have 3 rivers, 2 big major rivers, Mississippi and the Missouri River. We also have the Merrimack River. We've had, not too long ago, we had a police officer that was parked not too far from the Mississippi River, right just a little bit south of St. Louis, and saw a giant tic tac. He said about 30 foot long. And he said it just slowly moved across the sky and it just went zip toward Illinois. Back, I believe it was 2011, there was a lady and her son, her teenage son. They were going across Jefferson Barracks Bridge from Missouri into Illinois, and he got, I guess it was 8 or 10 pictures. He hit snap on his camera and just went bang, 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 and same thing, a tic tac, and it was low. The kid just barely put his camera up. It was just barely above treetops. The Kansas City area with the Missouri River, you can talk to Margie Kay. There is a lot going on there. In fact, right now they've got some sightings that are going on. That's an area of interest. I've been working the area of the Merrimack River with my team here in Missouri. In eastern, I guess we're kind of southeastern Missouri. And the Merrimack River has had sightings. We've been working that area now since 2018. We're going to be a case of interest at the MUFON Symposium next year in 2023. The MUFON Symposium is going to be in Cincinnati. And we're finally we've gathered up enough information. We've got some very, very interesting video that we've shot. Things that are right above the Merrimack River in and around. We're at 5 different locations, I believe, now in that area.
Do I spy alien in the background?
Yeah.
Is that a statue?
No, it was it talks and moves around.
Okay.
It was for sale at Home Depot last year.
That's funny. At Home Depot.
Oh yeah, it moves its head and says that it's here. It's come to Earth. It talks. It has a button you push and it talks.
Look, I mean, if UFOs and aliens are becoming commonplace in places like Home Depot,
Halloween.
Halloween, yeah, but it's part of the zeitgeist now, and I think that people that even if they don't all in believe it, they enjoy entertaining the idea, that extraterrestrials are visiting us. Are there differences in patterns between a river, lake versus ocean sightings? Are there because you describe this in terms of a kind
Uh-oh, I lost you. I don't know if you can hear me, but you froze up on me, so I can't hear you anymore. But I can give you the answer to the question, which would be the difference in a river and the ocean is it's more confined, and so people are more likely to. Whoop, are we coming back on?
So, Debbie, can you hear me?
Yes, I lost you. Yeah.
So we lost complete power in our home.
Oh,
so I'm
no.
coming at. Yes, I have 0 power. I'm coming to you on my cell phone right now.
Oh,
So-
no.
So we can improvise like this for a while and see how it goes. Hopefully the power will come back
Okay.
on, but it's pitch black here. You can't even, I don't think you can even see my face.
I know. My daughter left the country, and I asked her to send me a postcard of everything that she saw, and that's what I got. She said, it was Italy at night. It was so. Yes, I understand. To go on with the answer to the question,
Yes.
there's more of a chance of seeing something in lakes and rivers because you've got population, but you get out in the ocean and you have to be at the right place at the right time. On that cruise ship, I imagine I was the only one that saw that, only because of the time that happened. When you leave port, everybody is rushing over to change clothes so they can get the fancy pictures. They've got the dinner and that type of thing. I was out there taking pictures. So, and I the only one on that side of the ship that I could even see. Everybody they'd head to a bar or whatever. It's all right place at the right time. But when you're overlooking a lake or a river, there's more of a chance of people seeing something. Like in Hudson Valley, there's a lot of witnesses there. Also, too, in the ocean, you've got depth, and there's a different agenda. So maybe in the ocean, in the ocean, they could be going in and out as a way of hiding, as a means of maybe there's several different scenarios. They could have a base underwater. They could be going interdimensionally underwater. There could be a wormhole underwater. There could be time travel underwater, depending on the alien. You can't categorize everything that is happening in the extraterrestrial world and categorize it as one. You've got several different species, and they all have different agendas, and they all have different modes of travel. So that's what makes all this very difficult. But you've got depth. Now, when you have a river or a lake, they're a lot shallower, and a lot of times maybe they're just gathering something up. They're filtering through. I still believe that some of when you see these craft and they're filtering water up through the craft, they could in fact be either harvesting plankton, something food-wise like whales and dolphin eat, or they could be harvesting our hydrogen and using that for their electromagnetic fields.
Why do you think that they would be harvesting plankton or seaweed or that sort of thing?
Well, I've had a lot of reports where there's a craft that's hovering over the water, and you can see that it's sucking something out and then just spilling it out the top. There was a case in Puerto Rico, I believe, in 1982, where there was a fisherman who snorkeled down 25 feet and sat on the top of a craft, and he said that it was sucking things in through the top, and then out the bottom of this saucer-shaped craft, things were coming out the bottom. It was like sucking water in and then just, dumping it out the bottom. So filtering it through. Now, what was it filtering through? Was the agenda, maybe this thing was leaking and that was filtering the water out? Was it maybe harvesting something? Was it harvesting water samples? Was it harvesting food, which would be a plankton, seaweed, that type of thing? Was it trying to take hydrogen out of our water as a fuel source to replenish? That's what NASA did for years. NASA was all the way back, Mercury rockets, where they were using hydrogen to replenish their fuel cells. There's a lot of different reasons why, but that's done more in shallow water than it is in deeper water. I have seen and heard reports where these craft are hovering over the ocean, but there's less likely that they're going to be seen. You're not going to do that right along the coast when you could get the same matter out farther. Besides, there's probably not as much pollution the farther you get away from land, too. Oh, should I keep going? Because I can't hear you.
Rebooting the system.
There we are.
There we go. Okay. All right, we're good. Whew. That was a pretty long blackout. Getting like a flicker on occasion, I can understand, but that was a complete dropout. Sorry about that.
Storms?
No, I have no idea. Yeah, it's been good weather lately. So this kind of reminds me a little bit of this idea that extraterrestrials, way back when, were harvesting gold, or other resources. Is there any evidence that they didn't need to harvest resources for any other like off-planet purposes? That maybe they're creating something here, and that's what they were using these alleged harvestings for.
I know the Anunnaki, that they were here. I mean, the reports was to harvest gold. You mean now from the reports? Look at Travis Walton. They were. I think that craft just came down. Who knows for what? They took Travis to repair him because he was accidentally damaged. Shag Harbor was 1967.
Yeah.
That was a craft that hit the water, damaged, went about 20 miles up the coast. A couple days later, another craft came down into the water and helped repair the first craft. That craft just passing by the Earth and had mechanical problems and decided, okay, water planet, or were they here anyway? I mean, came right from out of the atmosphere right into the water. The other one came in, then they both left. Well, they left when the Russian a sub showed up. Also,
Right.
that's a whole nother long story, which you can learn more about that. I mean, there's a conference coming up in first weekend of October in Canada.
Yeah.
I can tell you about that later on. But
Well, another thing I've noticed is that one, it seems that bodies of water obfuscate or hide UFOs. Pascagoula might be another case as an example, right? And because there were other witnesses that did see this UFO, it wasn't just the two men. Which is another thing that you hear some people say, oh, these two guys had some kind of trip out, like they had some kind of shared dream or hallucination or whatever. But there are other witnesses in other directions that did see a UFO, and to this idea of UFOs hiding makes sense. But on occasion, there's a glow associated underwater. What would be the reason for that, do you think?
there could be a couple different reasons. Maybe the glow may just be I guess it'd be plankton that's on that's sticking to the outside of the craft. Because if you've ever if you're a diver and you've ever done a night dive in the Caribbean, I've done several of them there. I've spent a couple weeks in Cozumel, a couple different times, a week each time, and we did night dives. And the fun part is you go out on the boat, and when you're at about 15 feet, there's all this. I guess it's plankton that it glows.
Yeah.
And glows green.
Yep.
So you can take your hand and just move it around. I mean, it's just the coolest thing. I also, what was that? That it was Apollo 13.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about that. I can't. Gosh, oh my gosh, I can't. Was it Grissom? No, it was. It was the pilot that was played by Hanks. That he was saying that he followed that he was trying to find a ship to land at night, and he could see the as the ship moved, it had moved the plankton, and he that's what brought
to help guide him down, right? The bioluminescence. Yeah.
So maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're not necessarily glowing. Maybe there's plankton that's stuck to the outside of the ship.
That's interesting. Yeah. Almost like mussels or barnacles or something like that. Like get stuck to it somehow. And of course, you never know whatever kind of electromagnetic energy is associated with those craft. I mean, who knows what it could attract, and what kind of electrical currents might be excited by going in the water.
It could be like static electricity. Just this stuff is just sticking to it.
Right. What do you think their technology is based on the evidence that you have found? Is this anti-gravity? Is this something else?
What do you mean?
To the propulsion.
The propulsion?
Mm-hmm.
That's a loaded question. There's so many different. I mean, you've got the smaller grays, you got the larger grays, you got the reptilians, the insectoids, Oh my gosh. Um, those are kind of the main, but um, there's descriptions. The grays that Travis Walton saw, where he said what he described were short and they kind of had big eyes, but they were stocky. They weren't those tall, skinny ones. Then you've got the Nordics too, that are the tall, that look almost like human, but they've got the very blue eyes. And so there's so many different descriptions. I would say there's at least 10. If you're going to describe aliens and try and say, okay, well, this one was tall, this one was short, this, look at the humans on Earth. We don't all look alike. So a lot of these grays, I think, tall and short and everything, that could theoretically be from the same area. But there's enough different description. So with every different description of every different alien being, I'm sure you've got different kinds of propulsion. You've got different agendas.
Okay.
There's so much different information. And what I like to explain it, the way I like to explain it is we're trying as an investigator, we're trying to put pieces of a puzzle together. And let's just say you take 5 different puzzles and you throw them all in one box and you do that. And then you try and make one puzzle out of it and pieces aren't going to fit. And until we can separate everything out, we're not ever going to find the answer. So as far as propulsion, I'm sure there is something that I'm sure they're using hydrogen, because I've got that from a very good source, that a government source that said, I asked, what do you think they're doing underwater? Could it be and the person told me, well, they're harvesting our hydrogen for one, but you can't tell anybody. And I said, yeah, I've been saying that for years. So, maybe that person had heard me say that before. Maybe they're just maybe it's a cooling system type thing. Maybe it's food. I'm not really sure.
Of the reports where radiation or radiation burns have been reported in close encounters, does that mean that it's us and not them? Or do you think they're using nuclear energy, which seems odd to me if you're, transversing, solar system to solar system, that you would need nuclear?
I don't know if it would necessarily be nuclear, but maybe depending on the type of craft, because there's, like the Pascagoula, the aliens came right out, floated out, and picked the 2 gentlemen up and took them back in the craft and then moved them back. So they were in close proximity. They weren't burned. But then you have people who, like Travis Walton wasn't burned, but the inertia from the craft lifting up threw him several feet up into the air to the treetops. So he wasn't burned. But then you hear stories of people that are their faces are burned, the heat, that type of thing. I have a case. Well, I have a case. Actually, John Schuessler. It's something that I've been working on. Margie and I are doing another book on Piedmont. We have the anniversary coming up next year, the 50th anniversary of Piedmont.
Okay.
And just about 8 miles north, which isn't all that far from me where I live here, of Piedmont, back in October 10th of 1973, there was a truck driver at 6:30 in the morning was coming into Cape Girardeau. And the gentleman wore glasses. His wife was sleeping in the cab. He looked in his rear view mirror and there was this very bright light. He stuck his head out the window to see what it was because it was blinding him in the light. And when he did, he saw this craft, and the craft kind of like flashed a light at him, and it melted his glasses to his face.
Yeah.
So, and there's I've got newspaper articles on this. It was investigated by Harley Rutledge. So in that case, he was burned. He ended up with radiation burns. He was blinded temporarily, lost 15% of his peripheral vision. He was taken to the hospital in Cape Girardeau. His wife had to drive the truck the rest of the way in. And the fun, kind of interesting part about it was that was the only case that we know of where somebody was injured by a UFO and able to collect workman's comp because he was working at the time.
And collect workman's comp. That's crazy.
Yeah, he did. He collected. John Schuessler worked on that case, so he did. He was able to collect workman's comp. So in that case, yes, this gentleman was burned. In a lot of cases, they are. It depends, I think, on the craft, on the type of craft. Maybe it depends on whether or not maybe there was a problem with the craft.
for instance, there's a case, George, I think it's Arifsky, in 1975 in the Hudson Valley area, and this person saw two aliens, a UFO, and two aliens like on the road ahead of him, collecting something like he thought were samples or something. The idea that we keep getting reports of harvesting or collecting, like there's almost a curiosity behind the behavior of some of these beings. To me, that would indicate that these aren't, earthbound, that they're not from here. Because if you were inherently a species that's extraordinarily advanced scientifically, you've been here for whoever knows how long. The very very little simple things about Earth life wouldn't be a surprise to you, or wouldn't be an intrigue. Or do you think that they're just like us in the regards to they're always curious about learning something new about the world they live in?
I think it's a curiosity, and not, you don't necessarily gather your information and then you're done. Case in point, I got to talking to Tom Ferrario, who he and I are on the Marley Woods team. He took Ted Phillips's place. He's still keeping up the investigation in Marley Woods. But Tom and I were talking the other day, and I said, you remember when we were kids, and I grew up in Arizona, he grew up here. They were gathering our teeth from school. As we would lose our baby teeth, we were gathering them up in school. Now, I lived in Safford, Arizona. They were doing nuclear testing not too far away in Tucson, and they wanted to find out if in baby teeth, I guess because they're more porous, if there was any radiation. I guess that's what they were doing. Well, Tom said that they had dropped something, something nuclear, some kind of dust or something in the city where he went to school, and that they had gathered his teeth here in the St. Louis area. So it was just odd, because that evening I went home, and on my cell phone I was looking, and something popped up, and it said that the government has come out and they have found these teeth this many years later, and they were analyzing them to see if there was any radiation. So they're still interested in these teeth they took from us when we were children. They have saved them. So the same thing maybe with these alien beings, that they'll come over, they'll gather some data, and then they'll come back later, 10 years later, and they do a comparison. And it's a comparison study, and they're going along gathering their information, gathering their data. And for what purpose, I don't know, but I don't see the point. If you're going to gather data on something, it seems like you'd want to do it several times over a period of time to see if there was any change.
Sure. Have you had any cases involving caves at all? UFOs entering, exiting caves, or near a cave?
Oh, we are the cave state. Missouri is the cave state.
Interesting.
And we've got these strange balls of light. We've got these craft that are coming in and out of our waterways. And a lot of the activity in and around the Merrimack River that we've been looking at is not too far from Merrimack Caverns, which actually, even there's only, I think 8 miles used to be open. I think there's only 2 now. They're having some kind of a problem with gases, but the thing goes about 14 miles. But we are the cave states, and we're trying to figure out why there's so much activity in Missouri. Yeah. And so it has to do with caves. We have a lot of lead mines. We've got the New Madrid Fault. So we've got an earthquake line. We've got 3 rivers. We think all of this, all or any of it, or of the above, may be some of the reason why, but the caves definitely. Ted Phillips was looking at caves in his investigations.
Well, there seems to be a correlation between like geomagnetic anomalies and UFOs. Like Pine Bush here in the Hudson Valley, it's a little further north, at the tip of this kind of meeting of a geomagnetic anomaly, and it's kind of wedged in between these two. I'm doing a really bad job of illustrating this, but there's like these two bulbs if you look at the map, and it's kind of in the crest of these two things, and kind of wedged in between, and that place has a lot of sightings over the years. It's a strange place, and I imagine that there has to be a correlation between lead in the, obviously the science says, okay, so there an anomaly is because of the material in the ground, typically high levels of lead. But then why would a craft be there? I mean, what would be the purpose of being in these locations, these anomalous geomagnetic locations? I mean, we fly planes, right? Like, we don't really care what like the amount of lead is in a certain area, or what the magnetic field is. We just fly above, we move. So I just imagine, why would it be important to these beings of the craft?
The caves necessarily, or the lead, or the lead. Who knows? I mean, they were gathering gold centuries ago. Maybe they have a reason for the lead. Maybe not. Maybe it's just with the lead mining. Maybe that makes more openings. Maybe there's more caves. I know that between the caves and the waterways, you can travel pretty much anywhere under the surface, out of mind's eye, out of human sight, in the state of Missouri, with all the different waterways and caves. I mean, you can travel around, especially if you can manipulate a size. Because I know it's kind of far out there, but from what I'd heard, the Roswell craft, that it was one size on the outside and it was huge on the inside.
Well, that would be some sort of space warping somehow. Which I guess, if you're traversing using a warp technology, or you are warping space around you and slipping through, rather than affecting the molecules around you, or matter. So if that's possible, maybe it's possible that they could do something similar with their craft. Because that's the thing that always confused me, is that, okay, so they go towards a cave, they disappear, allegedly into a cave, and I'm thinking, how is that even possible? Like, how do these things, and if they were to traverse a cave system, like you were saying, underground, you'd have to be able to be pretty, adaptable in your size.
Look at Mount Hayes, the reports of Mount Hayes, Alaska, that the mountain, that they'll see craft heading toward the mountain, and then just this opening just opens up, the craft go in, and then it just goes back. I mean, it just like materializes and back materializes. They could be doing the same thing underneath with caves. Maybe the caves, under in the caves too, they'll go into the cave and there's an opening there where we think that it has stopped. Maybe it hasn't.
So they would be using caves, you think, to maneuver in a clandestine way? Okay.
I don't know. It could be. We have a lot of activity in the area. That seems like, I was doing research on that a while back, trying to think, what is it in the state? And this started out with cow mutilations, and the cow mutilations, there was all the ones that I was investigating, this has been back 8 or 10 years ago, were all around areas where there were caves. So I started looking where there were, because Missouri and Colorado, you get the San Luis Valley, and I started researching, pinpointing all the places where the famous cow mutilations were in Colorado, and they were all in and around caves. I thought, So then after that, I thought, I'm going to take a trip over there and try and go into the caves, and then try and make my way into some of the caves here. And then all of a sudden, the caves were closed down. They said that there were these bats in there, and that the humans were doing something to disturb their habitat. And these were rare bats. And then all of a sudden, these caves in Missouri were closed, and the caves in Colorado that I wanted to go into, they closed them because they said, well, they're afraid that humans were going to carry disease from this cave to this other cave, and that the bat dung in this cave, if it carried on the clothing, could kill the bats in this other cave. And so all of a sudden they stopped all this caving. And I thought, they closed them all off to the public just in the middle of me doing all this research where I was going to get into the caves. So I thought, well, the heck with you. I'm going to go underwater instead. So,
That's how you ended up underwater.
oh,
So,
yeah.
in the caves, other people must have been exploring there before you, right?
Oh, Ted Phillips. Back when I worked on his team. Oh gosh, back I think anywhere from 2004, 5 through beginnings, I think, of 2009. He kept up research there at Marley Woods for 3 or 4 years later, and then he got pretty sick.
Well, then why do you think they would close it down when you decided to do your own investigation?
Oh, I think it was a coincidence, maybe. Um, Maybe too many people were getting too close to something because that was kind of the talk back then. Oh,
Mm,
there's something coming in out of the caves, and that was kind of the buzz on the internet all about caves. And somebody all of a sudden
yeah.
decided, that the wrong person heard, and the word spread, and pretty soon, I mean, we were supposed to get a big reservoir out here and not too far from where I live, and they stopped this multi-million-dollar project because they said, well, there were these little tiny bats in there, and that was their
Mhm.
habitat. Um, Maybe it's a coincidence.
Maybe it's a coincidence, yeah, or maybe they just were afraid that the alien nerds and freaks would descend on these places en masse and disturbed what they're trying to preserve. I can imagine that. I mean, there's been movies out for long enough now where people met, like Independence Day, right, where people just kind of gather and they've got the signs and they're I think there is a fear that if you make something a UFO hotspot, then people are going to come, and it's going to become a kind of a mecca to that spot. And I suppose if you're trying to preserve something environmental, that you would definitely be afraid of that. Uninformed, probably, but I understand that that could be a concern.
Right, conservation. Talk to somebody else in conservation, and they are very,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
concerned because I had a sighting, Mark Twain Forest in Mark Twain Forest. I think it was in 2007, and the forestry said that they're absolutely. People kept saying, "Well, it was fireworks that was going off." People were seeing, the witnesses were seeing something that it wasn't. There was a craft. They tell us it was fireworks coming from the sky, and then they're drawing a craft. And they're drawing another craft and people beaming up. And I was like, this isn't what they're telling me one thing and drawing something else. And I
Yeah.
talked to the head of the park service here, and she said there was a fire alert in that area. And she said, there's no fireworks going on in my forest. So they are very protective. And a lot of the forests out here, they don't even allow four-wheelers or side-by-sides because they don't want things torn up. So
Yeah,
I
of
can
course.
understand that.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Do you think that, based on the reports, that these alleged extraterrestrials really do care about this planet?
Um, yeah, I would say so because they're so far from what we've learned, just from people that have been abducted. They're so far advanced over us. I mean, you hear reports where people say, "Well, I've been abducted," and they say we have to do this for our environment and we have to try and protect our planet.
Hmm.
I believe they're scientists. A lot of them are just scientists, whether or not it's curiosity, but probably scientists. If they had the technology to come over here, if they wanted our planet, they would just blow everything up and take over. It seems like they've been visiting and they've been visiting. They live here too. I mean, this is the planet. Like I said,
Hmm.
there's underwater. I think there's a base in Mount Hayes. I've done research in Alaska, but I believe that they want to protect the planet, and they're not going to harm. They're not. If they could have, they would have. They would have by now. If they wanted to, they would have by now. Because I think in the blink of an eye we could be gone if they wanted. The technology is so far advanced. I think
Before,
more of what's going on is this is home to extraterrestrials. We just don't
Mhm.
realize it. I heard in December, Lou Elizondo was talking in the UK, and one of the last questions they asked him was, where do you think these visitors are coming from? And he said, what makes you think they're coming from someplace else?
Yeah.
That was his answer. And I thought, ooh, I knew it.
Well,
I
the
think
question though is, are they of the same dimension, or are they coming from a different dimension? Because it's got to be at some point. At some point, something has to give if they're living in the same physical realm on this planet and sharing the space with us. Eventually, we're going to explore, all parts of the depths of the ocean. We're going to go deeper and deeper into caves. We have LiDAR and other technologies that are scanning this planet continuously. So to me, it would be like, okay, well, if I'm hiding, eventually we have to disclose ourselves. But it doesn't
oh my
seem like
goodness,
that's happening right now.
they're still finding species of fish that we didn't know exist. We've been to the moon, but we don't know what's in our oceans. You can only go some deep. I think there are miles. I think what is one of the trenches is, I believe, 7 miles deep. There's
Mhm.
We're not capable. Oh gosh, I forgot his first name. It's been a long day. Cameron went down on that expedition a couple years ago in the Mariana Trench, and all he did was go down for a few minutes and then came right back up. I mean,
James
the
Cameron.
pressure is
Mhm.
incredible down there, and we can go into space, but we can't go down to the depths. They could be
Mhm.
down there living, yeah, and probably have been for centuries. Look at the ones that are in and around the Baltic Sea and Lake Baikal, the ones in Russia, that there are beings that are just swimming around down there. Nobody's going to see them because we're not down that deep.
Mhm.
There's who knows what kind of beings are down there. And then, like I said, the mountains that are just opening up, they're in there. They come out. There's places on this earth we haven't even explored. I mean, we probably know more about the Arctic and the Antarctic than we do some of the mountains in Canada and Alaska, way back
Mhm.
in Russia. I mean, some of the high peaks, Peru, and some of these different places, nobody goes there.
I guess my question though is, isn't it inevitable that we will find a way to scan or otherwise explore all of these, bits and pieces of the planet that are right now uh, you know, too hard to get to or too hard to explore?
No, I think we're lazy. Um,
But
uh,
do you think
yeah,
you don't think we'll get there?
well, we have people that are just they're happy with they're so involved in their own life
Yeah.
that we've lost a lot of the explorers. We don't. There's no the Lewis and Clark now are going to the moon, or they're trying to make their way to Mars. They're worrying now. They're wondering if
Mm,
Venus, in fact, is that uninhabitable.
yeah.
So
That's an
we're not
interesting point.
worried about our own planet. We're looking out there, and nobody really cares about going underwater. They go, oh, that's deep and dark, and that's wet, but wow, I mean, out of sight, out of mind. They're looking up at the skies. You look at the stars, you think, wow, like I did as a little kid in Arizona. I looked up at the sky and I said, that's where I want to go. I looked at the stars, and we
Yeah.
want to go outward. We've got all the telescopes. We could have telescopes. We could have stuff that's looking around down in the water, but we're not doing it. We've lost interest.
Well, that's a really good point. So it's almost like, we have lots of smart minds that instead of going into science fields, or they're going into banking or investment, or you know,
Exactly.
or developing apps, or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I had not thought about that. That the explorers are drawn, uh, or many more are drawn to outer space rather than, the depths of the ocean or other
Right.
spaces. But we've got cavers, right? We've got divers, people like yourself that are fascinated, that are exploring at the best of their ability.
But the problem is, right, I'm an explorer. I love going underwater, but I'm limited because of the equipment from the tech people. I'm limited as a recreational diver to 130 feet. I've been more like 145 feet. But you're not going to find a whole lot down there. Like I said, I was diving. I was down at 70 or 80 feet in St. Martin. And then I come up on the
Mhm.
ship to see the UFO as we, 20 minutes after we leave port, which was probably a couple hours after I'd just been underwater. But the thing is, you can have people, explorers like me, but you have to have the people that build the technology, that develop the
Mhm.
technology to be able to accommodate the explorers like me. And
you need an incentive, a financial incentive, right, to do that.
exactly, financial. So you haven't got. I mean, God love him. Shatner went into space. I mean, I got the shirt. I mean, yay! But I mean, that's the man was 80 years, or is 80 or 90 years old. I'm sorry, the man's 90 years old. But that's the whole point. Now, I'd love to go into space. I mean, the closest I've come is January. I went skydiving for the first time. I mean, I was tandem with somebody, but it was phenomenal. But my limits are limited to, if I want to press the limits a little bit, 140 some feet underwater. My limits are 10,000 feet jumping out of a plane because I don't have $250,000 plus to do what Shatner did. Of course, his didn't cost him, but
he earned it though. He earned it.
He more than earned it. I was so I'm so proud of him. I mean, I've got, if you look back there someplace, I think there's a replica of the ship on the shelf. I watched every minute of it, but we're limited by the technology that's developed by the people that have the money. And so the explorers, it used to be we could come across the country in a covered wagon. We could build a covered wagon ourselves. I can't build something. I don't have the knowledge or the money, the capabilities to build something to go really, really, really deep.
Well, there's this idea that out in space you can harvest, I'm saying excavate, extract, raw materials that would be in abundance on an asteroid or on the moon, and not here on Earth. And would actually, there's arguments that it would be cheaper to do that in space and then send it back here. Is there anything in the depths of the ocean? I guess maybe we can't know until we get there, which is, that's a problem, because how do you find an incentive to get entrepreneurs to spend money to send explorers down there?
Right, it's too costly. The explorers are shallow. Jacques Cousteau, I mean, his his grandson right now is right off the Florida Keys. It's not that many miles. I think it's 8 or 10 miles. We had a condo in the Florida Keys. We took our boat out right out of Key Largo and came across. We said, "Oh, look, there's a red buoy off in the distance." So we got closer and closer. We're trying to, there's a sign on it. It said, "Please do not," we get right up to it. It goes, "Please do not get within 500 feet. There's a research center underneath." And you had to get at least within 20 feet to be able to read the sign that said, "Don't get within 500 feet. But that's where they had an underwater research center there that they were working. And Jacques Cousteau's son, I mean, he started out, it's been in the 70s, but our research centers are in the ocean and they're not any deeper than maybe 30, 40, 50 feet. And, humans can't stay down very long, down in the water very long. So all of our research center, they do marine biology, they test water temperature. They test chemicals in the water, pollution, take fish and test them maybe to see if they're contaminated. I mean, they test the pollutants. They're very good at keeping things pretty protected in the Florida Keys. They limit how tall a building can be. They're really trying to protect the Keys. And I think that's why the research center was out there. But it's all shallow. There's nobody that's going really, really, really deep. It's really, really, really expensive. Everybody wants to go up.
Yeah. So, and we're all looking up too, except for you.
I'm doing both, but
right.
I've been higher up and jumped out of a plane, and I've been able to dive underwater.
It's got to get dizzy, a little disorienting.
I'd love to have a little submarine, but that's expensive, and even that, with the compressions and stuff, even the military submarines are limited to what I think it's for what they say 1,400 feet. They could probably go deeper than that, but I imagine not a whole lot.
Yeah. So you're like a human transmedium, Debbie.
No,
you're a whole other category in yourself.
I'm one of the last of the baby boomer explorers, maybe. I don't know. I want to try everything once.
That's great. I mean, your sense of adventure, it really is wonderful and it's inspiring. When that UFO that you saw, or USO that you saw, um, were there other witnesses to that?
No, no, that's what's
No.
I checked all over the ship. Nobody else saw it, and thank goodness I got a picture of it. Um,
Hmm.
no, everybody was so involved. You know, there were a few of us at the back of the ship as we're leaving, taking pictures of the scenery, taking, you know, and the reason I was out taking pictures because I didn't get to see anything because I was diving, you know, going to St. Martin. I didn't get to see St. Martin. I went in, they picked me up, took me shore excursion, went out on a boat, went diving underwater, came back, and so I'm like, oh wow, look at that. And I'm taking that's how I got to see that. Since then, I've been back to St. Martin, but that first time I'm taking pictures. Everybody else was worried about getting back, getting changed, and having dinner at 6:30 or 8:30. And the ones at 8:30 were the ones that were getting all the formal pictures done. And, you know, back then, this 2006 on Royal Caribbean, you would take pictures. The men would dress up in suits and the women in long dresses. And so everybody was getting ready. So they're all rushing back. We had an 8:30 dinner. So I had plenty of time. It was just me out there. And I'm looking around like nobody else knows. I was glad when the picture came out.
Are there tracks or highways that you've been able to collect data points on that would indicate to you that there are regular routes that some of these USOs slash UFOs would take?
Uh, I spoke with Jorge Martin in Puerto Rico. Very nice gentleman. I found his number, just called him up, and he answered. I couldn't even believe it. Um, he gave me some things for my presentations that some slides to use in one of my presentations. But he found pictures that right in front of ponds that looked like something underwater, some type of a base, and also in different parts. And he said it's a good thing he copied it right away because it disappeared. A lot of that got fuzzed out. So I believe that there's a route that craft may not take. I don't know if they probably transverse underwater all around the Caribbean because we've got sightings Guantanamo Bay. Um, I was I there was a sighting, couple sightings that came in from the military that were stationed there. They see craft coming in and out. It's funny. 2019, I believe it was. I was a speaker on the MUFON cruise, and we went to, I believe it was Cozumel and Costa Maya. We got to Cozumel, and Felipe, our guide, he's taking us around. I didn't get to go diving, but I'd been diving there several times before, and we're all wearing these UFO shirts. And then he said, "Oh, someone said, have you ever seen anything?" He goes, "Well, yes." And it was 20 years prior. He said he saw a silver metallic ball come out of the water. He said, just right off the coast past this little island. And I said, well, where would the island be? And he goes, well, actually, it's right there. So I got a picture of it. And he pointed, he said it came out of the water, followed him. He was leaving work, followed him, and he could see it through the mango trees. His cousin was right behind him about a quarter of a mile back and saw this ball following him. And I said, have you seen anything since? And he said, well, no, but if you ask any fisherman in Cozumel, all the commercial fishermen, he said they've all got stories of things coming in and out of the water. So we know there's a lot of activity in and around Cozumel. We know that there's a lot of activity in and around Guantanamo Bay, Catalina Island, um, the Malibu, between Catalina Island and Malibu. Oh gosh, where
Well,
else?
have you ever been? Have you been to the Amazon at all?
No, I'd love to go. I had a chance to go, and then there was kind of back a few years ago, and then there was kind of an uprising, and everything was canceled because they weren't
Uh,
letting flights in the area I wanted to go to.
so there was a political uprising of some sort or unrest.
Oh, I was supposed to go to Lake Baikal and then go to Japan with a TV special that they had already, they had that kind of in the works. And then we had this whole thing going on now. No one wants to go to Russia right now. So that's kind of the no more travel anywhere in that area. So a lot, and then a lot of it too, a lot of it was stopped because of COVID. And
When people are near a UFO, have a close encounter and sighting, sometimes they will smell ozone or like that kind of like electric metallic smell. Sometimes there's like a humming or a buzzing. Are there similar auditory effects with USOs?
yes, now that I think about it, they're called I can't Qatari. I don't remember the correct pronunciation. It's in my book. It's basically a croaking frog is the English translation for it. The nuclear subs. There's an area where the nuclear Russian nuclear subs would go into this area, and they could hear this clicking sound, and the sound when they would get near the area, the frequency was changing, almost like it was trying to communicate with them. And then when they would get out of that area, they couldn't hear it anymore. Then they would get back in the area, and then the clicking would start again. And then they try and go deeper, and then it would go deeper. And I mean, it was circling, kind of playing with them, almost like it was. And then they said several reports, and I've got them in the book. There's several reports of where they've even nicknamed it.
So it was like you're saying clicking, but it was kind of like a frog.
They said the best way to
croaking.
describe it, the sound sounded like a croaking frog.
Have you heard of any other cases that have had similar types of sounds?
The sound. That one probably most comes to mind. Most of the time, if there's a UFO encounter and it's picked up by military, it's underwater. It's more picked up something moving fast, sonar. But that was the one report, the series of reports that really came to mind because, that's something that they could hear in the submarine.
What about sensations? Like, do people get like an electrical or tingling sensations? Like, what about you when you saw your UFO? Did you have any kind of physical experience?
No, not with that one in particular. Where the ship was moving away from it too. It was farther out in the distance. So we were moving away from it, but I've been on UFO sightings. One just not all that long ago where I've walked into a house and things just changed. I mean, I've almost dropped my, out from under my feet. I mean, just almost collapsed.
Yeah,
I walked into the door of this one case that we were working on, and it's just like all my energy was sucked out of me. And I've had other cases where, oh gosh, maybe headache, nausea, that type of thing. That's when we're in and around something. Well, you're going to get some of that. Not very often either, but I always carry a Ziploc of batteries. I've had where every single battery that I had inside a piece of equipment, whether it was turned on or not, went dead, including a car battery. And that was in Hooper, Colorado.
Wow. Yeah.
Car battery went dead. Everything went dead. Margie and I have been out in a case, and I have video that we're taping this unidentified object, and her camera, you can hear on my camera, her camera totally, she says, my camera just went out. And on mine, it was night vision. You could see kind of lines moving up and down, interference, almost like how there used to be the old, oh gosh, what did they call it? There was way back when my dad was a TV repairman, and you'd get lines on your TV if you didn't turn certain knobs.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what it looked like on the tape. It did this interference, and then that went out. My computer went out. So we didn't stay very much longer. Our equipment, malfunctioned.
Do you think we need to change the narrative around UAPs a little bit more towards investigation into USO? I know people have talked about it, because of these videos and other things, but the focus always goes back to quote unquote UAP, what's in the sky, the gimbal, the tic tac, the UFO. But maybe it would seem to me that to get funding for technology that's advanced enough to go deeper into the ocean, maybe the best way to do that would be the U.S. government or military spending to take the narratives like, hey, wait a minute, these aren't just in the sky. We need to look down here too. Do you think there's a a reality where that's possible.
I think they figured that out. Otherwise, when they asked the question about underwater UFO activity, the answer was that's something we have to talk about behind closed doors. I think they figured that out. They may already be investigating, or somebody might be, because there is an interest now, especially with the Navy. You notice the Army didn't turn over anything. The Air Force didn't turn over anything. It was the Navy pilots and the Navy. All this stuff is happening that's being reported is happening above water, in and out of water. I think that's where the focus is going to be, and hopefully they'll start to develop some type of submarine, something that can go deeper, if not already. I mean, we don't know. As far as we know, as far as the government knows, the government, the people we elect, that we have submarines that can only go so deep. Beyond that, is there somebody running things that's been involved in all this? That's some, oh gosh, like they had Majestic 12, where they had the group of people that know everything. And I don't think everybody even knows everything. There might be one group of 8, 10, 12 people someplace, but as far, I know I'm kind of babbling here a little bit, but it just seems odd that our congressmen and our senators can't even find things out. And they've pushed to develop this office at Washington, D.C., which I believe is going to be, I guess, in the Pentagon. But they've pushed for this. They requested information, like Marco Rubio, and he gets back stuff that's redacted. He said, I've got a clearance. They don't. So it's like pulling teeth to get this out, but it's beginning.
It's beginning. And teeth are being pulled.
And it's beginning, and the focus is on water. And since what has been turned over and to the public involves water, I'm having a feeling that that's where the focus is going to be, especially since they didn't want to make. They made that comment that that's behind closed doors. I'm hoping that's where the focus is.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and for everybody listening, if you want to get Debbie's book, it's called The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, a reference guide to UFO/USO water-related activity. Debbie, it's been such a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Can I say something really quick? If you
please do.
In the Smithville, Cameron, or Richmond area, in and around Kansas City, Margie's looking for reports. August 10th, there was a very large craft seen in that area. We've had several reports come in, and so if anybody else has seen anything, please come forward and contact MUFON, because there's some kind of an event that's going on. 3 different reports now.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
And where can people find out? Oh yeah, it's really enjoyable. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, DebbieDives.com, Missouri MUFON .com, also MUFON.com. I'm listed there as the underwater director. Also, oh gosh, and I can never remember, but I'm going to be speaking. Oh, and I wrote it down here so I wouldn't forget. But I'm going to be speaking at a couple different conferences. And there we go. In Shag Harbor, there's the UFO Expo 2022, and that's October 1st and 2nd. And then October 29th and 30th, the Arkansas Paranormal Expo in Little Rock, Arkansas. That's 2022, and that's a charity event for the General MacArthur Museum. That's a really good event if you're in the Arkansas area. It's a very good cause.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I always feel like the ufological and paranormal community could really do more for raising money for causes and coming together as a group. I've been, trying to talk that up a little bit and see if people would put together fundraising, and it's so great to hear that, because there's a lot of good hearts in this community, and we could certainly, get a lot of people together if it's for a fundraising cause. So that's awesome, Debbie. Thank you so much.
It's a lot of fun. I go every year, and it's a lot of fun to go to. So check it out. It's in Little Rock, last weekend of October.
All right, there you have it. Thank you so much, Debbie, and thank you all for hanging out in the chat tonight. I appreciate your commentary, some of which I couldn't read during the show. As usual, please support this show by going to youtube.com/Mystic Lounge. Click the subscribe button, click the notification bell so you don't miss upcoming shows. And if you have any thoughts, please comment down below and share this page. Until next time, everyone. Peace and love, and live in the mystery.